Welcome, folks, to the Ministry of Dice. It's another Dice Masters set review for you all today. The Superman Kryptonite Crisis set has had a wide release across the United Kingdom and North America, and I'm here to give you all the ins and outs and some review thoughts. So let's get into it. Let's get started then with some basic set information. The Superman Kryptonite Crisis set is a DC Dice Masters expansion and is sold in the draft pack format. This is designed so that you can get a pack and start drafting with your friends down at your local gaming store, or collect the cards and dice that come inside and expand your collection so that you can use them in your constructed gameplay formats. If you're just getting started out, these packs do not include the key components you need to play the game. It is just the characters and actions and dice to expand your collection. So if you're just getting started, we'd recommend that you pick up a campaign box or a starter set to get those core components, or hang fire a little bit until the autumn when the new Secret Wars Origin packs come out, which are specifically designed as an individual new starter set, or beg, steal and borrow from another local down at your game store. Trust me, us long-standing players, we have got vats of sidekick dice and basic action dice to get you going. In total, the set has 152 cards in it, and each draft pack will give you 15 cards randomly selected from that wider 152 card collection. Those cards have different rarities on them. There are commons, uncommons, rares, super rares, and chase cards, which are full art cards. And each draft pack will give you 7 commons, will give you 3 uncommons, 2 rares, and 3 basic actions. Although, one of your rares may be substituted for a super rare or one of the full art chase cards. After having the set in hand for a couple of weeks now and playing around with it, I've definitely developed some thoughts. It's an interesting set. There's certainly a lot to like, but there's also a couple of notes that I want to share in the video. So let's start talking a little bit more detail about what's included, and I'm going to begin by getting into the theme of the set. So, as you've probably gathered by its name, the Superman Kryptonite Crisis set, the main driving theme is Superman-related stuff. Superman comic book lore, Superman mythology, and it appears to be inspired by the more contemporary, the recent kind of Brian Michael Bendis era of the character. Although that's not the limits of its borders, it definitely dives deeper into Superman mythology than that. Certainly the character cards in there, the recognisable main cast, popular Super Friends folks are present. Superman himself, of course, but Jimmy Olsen, Lois Lane, Supergirl, the Superboys, Jonathan Kent and Connor Kent, they're all present in the set. Also, the Rogues Gallery, Superman's classic villains are present in there too. Lex Luthor, Parasite, General Zod, Doomsday. So we've got that kind of Superman mythology, that Superman lore very firmly present in the release. But also some other kind of narrative-y bits too, like the Green Kryptonite, very well-known aspect of Superman lore is present there. There's a basic action called Arctic Breath, for example, which is about his Arctic Breath superpower. So yeah, the theme does run throughout. It is present within the tone of the cards. And there's lots of lovely little touches. If you're a Superman fan, like the character subtitles have little lore references in them. Some of the game texts are quite themey as well, the way they connect to the way the characters interact or battle within the comic books. So the Superman theme is strong. It appears in a broad core set of the cards within the release, and you can sense it, you can feel it. However, that said, it does also kind of open the borders up to some more wider kind of DC Comics folks. Batman, Wonder Woman and Harley Quinn, for a start, are all present because DC don't release anything that doesn't have the big four, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman and Harley Quinn, involved in one way, if not in all 4 ways. So they're all there, but he's also acknowledging, of course, that Superman is a member of the Justice League. So there's a little sprinkle of Justice League-y stuff with Batman and Wonder Woman and Hawkman and Hawkgirl, and is the Dr. Fate Justice League affiliated? I can't remember, but there's a little sprinkle of stuff in there. Although while I mentioned Dr. Fate, there's also some mystical, DC Mystic stuff in there. Dr. Fate and a couple of the Shazam family members, certainly those who have interacted a great deal with Superman in the comic books. But what that's also meant is some of the Rogues Gallery stuff, some of the villain characters that are there are kind of from that wider expanding of the view, the wider expanding of the borders. So Poison Ivy's in the set, the Joker's in the set, who are obviously more traditionally Batman villains. There's also an expansion of the the roster of Teen Titans that are available in the game, although some of them are character reprints. So Robin, Starfire, Raven, Wally West, first time Wally West has been printed, Blue Beetle. So the Teen Titans affiliation gets a roster boost in there too. Although, if you're a comic book fan and you read the DC comics, you'll know they're always all guesting in each other's books, and they're as heavily involved with Superman as Batman is, or the Justice League and stuff. So it's there, but that also means we've got some traditionally Teen Titans-y villains like Monsieur Mallah appearing in the set too. But the theme is strong throughout. There's no card that you would look at where you'd question a connection, the piece of connective tissue between Superman and the character, or the basic action, or the action card that you're looking at. So the theme is very present in the artwork, in the subtitles, in the game texts, and in just generally the character choices as well. So largely a Superman theme set, but with some wider borders into the larger DC universe. Now then, it's quite often the case with a new Dice Masters release that we see an injection of some new game effects, or some game mechanics, or keywords, or something curious that comes along, a new rule interaction that injects some new gameplay styles, some new approaches, some stuff to experiment with, some stuff to play around with. However, the Superman Kryptonite Crisis set, this is going to be a short section in this review because it does not introduce any new keywords, any new gameplay mechanics, anything curious. There's not an alternative win con. It doesn't, when you look at it in comparison to, say, Dark Phoenix Saga, that they introduce things like Founder and the loyalty tokens, there's nothing in that ballpark. It does reinvigorate and revisit some old favourites, certainly that were more prevalent in DC sets, and I'll come to that in a minute, but it's not giving us anything new. It's I would describe it as kind of like a big old slab of classic Dice Masters, just boom, there you go. And it's a good thing and a bad thing. That's a pro and a con, because if you're experienced or even learning, your entry point is easier. You just know where you're at, and the feel of the game with Kryptonite Crisis. But if you are interested in a game that evolves, and the evolving elements that come along with a new release, like I sometimes am, then you might find yourself a little bit disappointed that it's kind of a bit standard fare in some places. Okay, so Kryptonite Crisis isn't so hot with regards to bringing some new mechanics or gameplay effects or keywords to the game. That is what it is, as I just said, but what it does have is some returning favourites, some returning mechanics, some returning game effects, some returning keywords that we know and love from days gone by in the history of Dice Masters. In the keywords and mechanics subheading, if you will, there's a few notable ones. Great to see stun tokens making a return to the game. Last seen on Mr. Freeze way back in the Batman set, I want to say. Just a little sprinkle of stun tokens in days gone by, but now it's come back in a big way with a good handful of cards that have stun token related kind of things to play around with. So, not new, but refreshing, reinvigorating the idea. We've also got range coming back in a big way in this set. Last seen in the Warhammer 40,000 campaign box and team packs. Obviously what happened with 40k happened, but it's nice to see range coming in one of the superhero IPs. And I said on a previous video actually on this subject that kind of works for me. I can see in my head how range as a keyword and a game effect ties into superpowered beings with blast effects and fireballs and laser beams and all that kind of thing. So it works and it fits, and the character selection that they've chosen to give range to adds up. So that's great to see. So the keywords and the sort of the sort of keywordy style mechanics, because stun token is technically not a keyword, but it kind of is a keyword, is strong. The game is strong in that respect in Kryptonite Crisis. We can also see in game text themselves some interesting returning faves, or certainly returning faves in spirit, if not identical reprints. I, for one, am very pleased to see some control effects coming back into the mix. I'm liking Wonder Woman a lot. I'm loving how we're seeing that's not just a nerfed version or a reprint in spirit. That's an improved Super Wonder Woman with even more added value elements to it. So really pleased to see that. Circling back round to range, we're seeing a Venerable Dreadnought reprint with the Brainiac 5 card, the rare Brainiac 5, which is another popular classic kind of game-winning effect that people used in the past. And of course, I can't talk about returning game effects without mentioning the Barry Allen with some version, a kind of sort of version of the half-elf bard effect, the notorious half-elf bard effect, although much more balanced in the way it plays and the cost of getting him on the table, buying the dice and fielding him. So lots of returning faves making a comeback in Kryptonite Crisis. You could also see it in the globals as well. There's some returning globals. There's prep effects that are very popular, kind of tried and tested and true sort of staple effects in the game. There's also force attack globals and cake, very popular global effects from back in the one of the D&D sets. It's just falling out my head. Not Waterdeep, not Faerun, not Under Siege. It was the one that I always forget. Regular viewers will know I always forget one of the D&D sets, and I'm pretty sure it's from that one. But largely referred to in the community as the Cake Global. That's making a return. So while it's not so strong in terms of the new stuff, is definitely reinvigorating some popular game effects and popular gameplay mechanics from days gone by. One thing I like to look at with new sets as a collector of Dice Masters as well as a player of Dice Masters is the art and graphics. And I have to admit, I have to confess, it pains me to say it because I'm a DC fanboy. It feels to me like the Superman Kryptonite Crisis set is, on this front, a set of highs and lows. There's some artwork that I look at and I think that's really tremendous, and there's some artwork I think, why? No, that seems like an odd choice. Now, there's reasons for this. I think there's a couple of reasons for this. I think, firstly, when it sits in comparison to the two other most recent sets, the Marvel Dice Masters Infinity Gauntlet and Dark Phoenix Saga set, there seems to be something of a more cohesive tone to those two sets, and the Superman Kryptonite Crisis seems less cohesive. So if you get your binders out, finish this video first, but then get your binders out. And if you do that and you flick through your Infinity Gauntlet cards and look at them kind of all together, or flick through your Dark Phoenix cards and look at them all together, there's like a cohesion to the tone and the dynamic of the colour palette that kind of ties the set together and works. Whereas if you flick through Kryptonite Crisis, it seems a little bit more inconsistent. You can sense and feel it's come from all these different kind of sources and stuff, and it doesn't knit together quite as well with a flavour of artwork that works when sat next to one another in the binder. The other thing that occurs to me, and I may be generalising here, but I feel like Marvel puts a lot more work into having a wider range of variant covers for their comic books. And they also do a lot more work in dedicated artwork that's been created for use in things like trading cards and in games. So I think the artwork pool for the Marvel sets is a lot wider and a lot deeper compared to the artwork pool that WizKids have got available for Dice Masters in DC. So I think some of the artwork I'm seeing on the cards I sort of recognise as panel, artwork taken from panels inside the covers of the comic books. And some of the kind of alt cover selections, they're not as expansive as they are compared to Marvel, so they're having to make more careful choices. And I also have a bit of a suspicion, through conversations that I've had with WizKids, that DC are a little bit more precious and prescriptive about what artwork WizKids are allowed to use on the cards, which has meant that when you look at it all together, it doesn't kind of add up, and there's certainly some highs, but there's also some lows. I mean, as far as the lows go, Superman is the main, the named character of the set, and I'm just kind of really not into the painted artwork that they've chosen to use for him. I know that's subjective, and some of you may like it, but I just can't get on board. And I find other cards, I've made a little list, like the Parademon, that's clearly in-book panel artwork, and it just looks a bit kind of basic and simple. Same again with Monsieur Mallah. The Joker, when you've got guys like Brian Bolland who've made iconic Joker artwork, I'm just not sure why they're making the choices that they're making around that Joker artwork. Doomsday is weird, like this weird zoom in on his face and stuff, when you could have gone for a nice classic Doomsday image from the Death of Superman storyline. Dr. Fate seems a bit odd, like the main draw, the character that you see in the image is the reflection of Baron Mordo on, like, Dr. Fate's helmet is like right up zoomed into the card image, and I don't know, it just seems like too many lows of that nature going on inside the set. But to be, a bit more balanced, there is highs as well. I love Barry Allen, the Jim Lee Batman. Great to see some John Cassaday artwork in there. I love Robin's artwork, and the way it's got that kind of those sparkly lines behind him in the foil version, it looks really, really awesome. Starfire, Supergirl. This is artwork with a lot of character, a lot of colour, a lot of life and dynamic to them. Wonder Woman's awesome. That's an alt cover. That's a great piece of artwork. But I just feel like the balance isn't right. Oh, Parasite as well. Love Parasite. It's the glowing energy sucky hands. Awesome. But I think the main thing is it stands out more, as I say, because the whole set is just sort of less cohesively tied together as the two previous Marvel sets, which is a shame because there are some tremendous, some of the best artists working in comic books today produce artwork for DC Comics or have produced artwork for DC Comics, and there could have been some awesome selections. But I just think because they're having to rely on alt covers or artwork from inside the pages of the comic book, the choice is more limited or more challenging because you're having to remove speech bubbles and things. So there you go. So if you're into collecting Dice Masters and the artwork is a big part of your gameplay experience or your Dice Masters collecting narrative, then you might find this set a little bit disappointing. I tell you what though, on the subject of art and graphics, one massive tick in the box for Superman Kryptonite Crisis, the text readability in the game text boxes is much improved, massively improved. The game text seems to be written in a much clearer, more bolder text. They've changed the colour of the globals to be this blue that stands out more and is much more easily readable on the card text than the red was, or certainly the red was in the sort of newish style and feel of Infinity Gauntlet and Dark Phoenix Saga. So certainly pleased to see that WizKids have been taking on board the player feedback about the readability of the cards as they're out on the table or as they're in binders, and taking steps to improve that and address that issue. And as far as I'm aware, those steps are going to be further improved and looked at when the new look and feel Dice Masters comes along with Secret Wars later in the year. So yeah, okay, I'm a bit down on the artwork, but I've got to say the clarity of the game text and the globals I am much, much happier with. The next little review subheading I like to use for these videos is draft or constructed. How does this set feel for those who like drafting and that's their preferred way of playing the game? How does this set feel for those who are into constructed gameplay, collecting and building your own teams? And there's a few notes on this one. There's a few thoughts I have here. I'll start with draft, and I've got to be honest, confession time, I've not drafted it. I've not drafted the set yet, so I don't have a great deal of experience to offer any real in-depth thoughts. I'm struggling to get the measure of it from a cold read of the game text and from my experience of playing it constructed as to how it might pan out in draft. I am kind of like I can't see the patterns in it. I can see patterns forming in Infinity Gauntlet. I can see patterns forming in Dark Phoenix Saga that kind of told me, well, there's your sort of little draftable channels, if you will, that you would follow when drafting within the set, and the kind of the little archetypes within the set that you would then start drafting your teams around. So I'm struggling to get the measure of it. I have heard anecdotally that it seems decent enough. There's a good spread of interesting cards across all the rarities, which I think is important in draft. There's decent win conditions. There's decent control that you stand a chance of drafting. So you can pretty much always get a passable team, even though it might not be a mega winner in terms of the draft, levels of competitiveness. What I have heard anecdotally is that it's a bit of a set you struggle with ramp and churn for. It's very difficult to get up to those higher cost characters, and it's very difficult to kind of manage your bag through, which surprises me because there are, there's prep globals and such like within the set, but that's what I've heard anecdotally. But I can't judge that myself. I'm reserving judgment right now until I get an opportunity to draft the set, but those are all things that somebody who's looking to pick up the set to draft with might want to consider. On the constructed side, though, I think it's got a lot to offer. Looking through the cards and playing and building teams, I've found that there seems to be a good mix of stuff. Like if you're into playing competitively, there's some really nice eye-catching sort of win condition stuff that you can make rough and tumble teams with. The range stuff like Shazam and Brainiac 5. Barry Allen is another eye-catcher. There's a nice bit of direct damage pingity-ping for players who like that with Batman. There's also nice janky stuff to play around with, like the General Zod and the Harley Quinns. I think there's stuff going on in there. There's some sidekicky stuff as well that you can be playing around with. So I think it's got competitive, but it's got a bit of jank. And I think it's got a lot to offer people who like theme or like to make kind of less competitive but more creative teams. Certainly, it gives the DC card pool a big boost for stuff around for affiliated and themey play. Your Teen Titans, your Super Friends, your Justice League, your Mystics are all getting a roster boost so that there's little synergies, tribal synergies in the affiliations. And it's got nice kind of casual, fun sort of jank that isn't quite face smashy, but has got opportunity to challenge you as a team builder and to give you fun games. So I think it's got a lot more to offer on the constructed side. On my initial understanding of the set, and again, I'll caveat all this by saying I've only played teams that I've constructed myself. I haven't done any drafting, so this could be a very imbalanced section of the review. But if you're out there looking for a set to give yourself some stuff to use for constructed gameplay, yeah, I think the cards that I look at them and I go, well, I can build a team around that. And what more could you want from a set? There we are then, folks. That brings me to the end of my DC Dice Masters Superman Kryptonite Crisis review. I hope that's helped you out, if you're on the fence about bothering to pick up this set, or if you're just curious, a looky-loo, interested to see what the set has got to offer, then it's my wish and hope that it's given you some value today. Of course, it is all subjective. It is all my view. So if you've got a counter argument to something I presented in this video, or perhaps a thought that I haven't covered, then please do feel free to jump down in the comments below and add that in there. I certainly know I've got newer players who tell me that some of the stuff in the comments is just as useful, although obviously not as useful as what I say inside the videos as well, so please do that. If you're new to the channel, it would be my privilege and my honour if you hit that subscribe button and joined my little community of Dice Masters fans who are subscribed to the channel. And if you've enjoyed the video today, please take a moment to give it a like. Let me know that it's something useful, I'm going in the right lines, and it is helping you out. Otherwise, I've been Chris from the Ministry of Dice, and I'll see you around these parts on YouTube, over on my website, britroller6.com, or on the Ministry of Dice podcast sometime soon. Thanks for watching, folks.